Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. Ellie, female 38, and I, male 40, had been married for 15 years, together for two, and to me, we had the perfect relationship. We were compatible in so many ways, from our views to our aspirations and everything in between. Even as an atheist, she led me to believe that she was the soulmate that God sent to me from heaven. I felt like I lucked out in the truest sense, and now that I think about it, she led me to believe that she did too, at least for the past 11 years out of our marriage. It wasn't until 2 years ago that I first overheard the conversation that broke my heart for the first time. It was the day of our 13th anniversary, and we decided to throw a small party, inviting all our near and dear ones. We had a sweet time celebrating our love with our near and dear ones, eating, drinking, and dancing our hearts out, and eventually everyone started leaving except for Ellie's small friend group, who were planning to stay back. Along with them, I decided to have a couple of my own friends stay back too, and as they were chilling in the kitchen, we were drinking in the living room. So when I decided to grab something from the kitchen and heard my name being called out from the distance itself, I stopped and, in my drunken state, decided to hear what the conversation was about. What I overheard felt like a blessing in disguise as I stood there, hearing my wife, the woman who I had just celebrated my anniversary with, talking and joking about how it is, the money that she sees in me, all the while encouraging her other younger friends to look for money because love always doesn't last. Needless to say, I was heartbroken. I stood there in silence for a couple of minutes thinking about what just happened to ensure if I wasn't hearing the wrong thing, and boy, her comments, one after the other, berating me, berating our marriage, making fun of the most vulnerable, precious moments of our marriage, just kept giving me the reassurance that I so very much didn't want. That was the first day I cried over our relationship. I took my friends into the room where we sat and enjoyed the fine whiskey, all discussing about how we all met during such a young age, during college, how we dated around, and at the end it was just me and Ellie who lasted, while the others ended up marrying people other than the people they dated in college. And man, that is when the tears started rolling down, and it wasn't even unnoticeable. The guys immediately asked me what was up, extremely worried about me. I don't know if it was all the alcohol, but I found it quite easy to open up that night, and it was that night itself that my friends told me that I needed to run ASAP. But I guess I needed a few more slaps to understand and realize my worth. It took me a whopping 2 years to do that, to come to the realization that I was a human being too and didn't deserve to go through such treatment. At one point, I even felt like she had started making these comments close to me on purpose, and obviously, it wasn't like I never confronted her about them. I always did, and it always led to arguments and me having to get berated by not just her, but also her friends about being a weak husband who was unable to take a joke. Well, it was about 4 months ago that all crap hit the fan. It was like the straw that broke the camel's back. It was a normal day, but I had decided to come home early to surprise my son with his favorite snacks because I had found out that he had done well on his exams. So I get home and set everything on the kitchen counter as I see my wife's spare iPad blowing up like anything. I click on it to see what's up, and boy, I immediately saw text after text from a group chat, which consisted of all her girlfriends and another chat which just had a black heart emoji. Now, I was curious because there was no way a woman in her late 30s was so into texting. I knew it was wrong of me, and you all can give me as much, shit for it, but there is not a single inch of regret that I have inside me for doing that because opening the group chat itself was like opening the Pandora's box as I watched these women in their early to mid 30s, most of them married or committed, so much so that I have personally met many of their partners, discussing about their affairs and their affair partners. And man, it was a pain to see my wife so excitedly talking about her experiences that she had with none other than my son's chemistry professor. Sounds like a movie plot, I know, but hold on tight because it gets worse. So I decided that it was going to be that day itself that I was done with her. I was done trying to fix something unfixable, and immediately took screenshots after the other of the group chat along with her chats with the chemistry professor. I also forwarded as much information I could about her friends and their partners as I could from her iPad to myself and confronted her that night itself. And oh man, all hell broke loose as she went through all these different acts from expressing anger, denial, apologies, and then just plain screaming at me, telling me that she's going to ruin my life, all the while packing up her things. She didn't care about anything at that moment. It was like I saw a completely different version of her that day. And honestly, I think that was the real her jumping out. The version of her she had been hiding inside for God knows how long. She didn't even bother to check up on our son. She just got up and left. I filed for divorce the very next day, and she was served right after, while she was living with the chemistry teacher, and he dumped her there and then because she had become too boring for him. Ever since then, we've been having this cold war as we try to navigate co-parenting together until the divorce finalizes. This co-parenting thing has been hell so far. Ellie either has been trying to talk me out of the divorce, blame me for everything, or threaten me to take me to court for something I had never done. So this week was no different. As she came to take my son, she went on and on about all the evidence she had to ruin my life, telling me how she was going to make the divorce so much harder for me, yada yada. All this time I was quiet because I didn't want to make things hard for my son, who had already been struggling to come to terms with this divorce. But this time I had enough. Right after probing her a bit, she pulls on an array of fake screenshots that she wanted to show in court. I laughed at her face, inviting her in because I had quite literally had enough. I wanted to show her all the evidence I had been hiding. So she walks in thinking that all I could show her was proof of her affair, but as I pulled out the very large file on my phone with the label of cheater, full of screenshots between her and the chemistry teacher, as well as the chats between her and her girlfriends, she immediately starts sweating, tears filling up her eyes, ready to start crying her crocodile tears. She starts begging me to not tell anyone anything, how a lot of people were already mad at her for everything that happened, and how she wasn't going to be able to afford losing more people in her life anymore. I simply just told her to leave me alone and we'd be good, which she did. Just left with my son, but then spammed my phone with texts telling me how wrong it was of me for screenshotting everything. I received a couple of messages from her sister as well, who hasn't spoken much on this issue before, telling me how, although she agrees what my wife had done was wrong, I was wrong for having screenshots of what her friends did as it was none of my concern. So, Reddit, AITA, any advice would be much appreciated. Firstly, I would like to apologize. I know I should have done this much earlier and not held all this evidence just to use in the court and or to blackmail my ex-wife, but I was just acting in accordance with what my lawyer had told me to do, not talk about the evidence until the divorce was finalized. I wasn't even going to show it to my ex-wife, but the anger had the best of me and I wasn't able to hold it in. Well, that was my mistake, and my mistake alone, because my lawyer was right. I guess he was speaking from experience after all, but honestly, whatever happened was like a situation where I lost as well as won in a way. Confused? Let me explain it to you all. So basically, the day my wife returned to drop off my son home, we met outside and I was out with my phone in my hands and she asked me for it because she had left hers home. I thought nothing of it since she just lived a couple of minutes away from me, so she wouldn't really need her phone. Red flag number one, I know. Well, she snatches my phone from my hand and immediately drops it, smashing it with her leg. She smirks, thinking she had done something great. But she was dumb enough to not realize that if something was so important to me, then I would probably have multiple copies of it. Well, not only that, the entire exchange was caught on my security cameras. This time, I didn't say anything though. I acted like I was shocked and sad over what happened, pretending that I wanted her to replace the phone by demanding her for money while she drove away. I'm honestly more shocked at her idiocracy than surprised. I'm going to drive to the cops soon with the security footage as well as my broken phone. I will also soon message her friends' partners with the screenshots. We'll update you all then. I went to the cops today and they asked me if I wanted to press charges, which I obviously did. So she was taken into custody by the cops and is facing a fine along with about a couple of weeks in jail for damage to property. My lawyer was happy with this. Surprisingly, instead of being mad at me because this just made my case stronger and might enable me to get full custody. So I'm happy about that. As for my Ellie's sister, she is not happy. LOL. She has been blowing up my phone like crazy, berating me for putting her sister in jail. I simply just laughed at all her delusional texts and ignored them because, of course, I had important things to do. So, first, like I had planned, I decided to, one by one, message the partners of my Ellie's friends. It was a great deal of work, to be honest, because the group had about 7 people, literally all of them cheating. It will take me a while to get responses too, so I will update you all whenever possible. Firstly, I would like to apologize to you all for such a late update. I had gotten too caught up in the mess I created. Well, like I had stated in my last post, I had messaged my ex-wife's friends' partners regarding the fact that they had been cheating on them. A lot of them responded, and surprisingly, the majority response was quite positive, towards my end, obviously. I had become the straw that broke the camel's back for most of their relationships because they had their own suspicions. After their breakup, we all decided to meet up, and guess what? Now I have another small group of friends out of this situation. As for the divorce, it's almost coming to an end. With so much evidence against her, I won full custody along with almost next to no alimony. I have decided to cut off my wife and her family from our lives, as neither me nor my son want anything to do with her after everything that happened. I want to thank this community for helping me stand up more for my son and myself than I was ever able to. NTA, but why haven't you told the friends' partners anything yet? Wouldn't you want to be told if your wife cheats on you and someone knows? Please tell them, since by hearing about your wife, they're probably in a similar condition as you. NTA, try to get full custody of your son. She seems like a danger, just not to herself, but to you and your young son too. Definitely wouldn't recommend trusting her with him. It's taken me some time to admit it, but I, 26 male, was treated a little differently to my siblings growing up. I was the baby of the family and the only boy, so I'd say I got some extra attention and a little bit of a softer parenting style than my older sisters, 29 and 30, female. The way they tell it, I was like some kind of revered god. I personally think that's an extreme exaggeration and going way too far. This caused some contention between us, especially during our teen years. They always felt like I was getting more than they got at my age, while I always felt a little like they were trying to undermine me. For example, I started piano lessons at 13 and have been practicing ever since. When I first asked for this and my parents said yes, my sister's reaction was to protest and point out the times they weren't awarded the same luxuries. They felt slighted, but I also did because it felt like they were trying to take opportunities from me. I thought we had since moved on from all this. We didn't talk for a period of time in our late teens, early 20s, but we've all since made up, and we're well into our respective adulthoods now. My parents hosted a family brunch earlier today. During this, my husband was detailing to everyone about how our dream home build is coming along and how specific I am with our requests towards the architect and contractors. He playfully and lovingly called me a spoiled brat. I watched my sisters share a look that wasn't so playful and loving. When I called them out on it, they said it was still a fitting nickname. This was something they had called me plenty of times over the years, just without any of the teasing affection it holds when coming from my husband. I basically stormed out of my parents' home after that, and I honestly can't believe I'm feuding with my siblings at this point in my life. AITA? What's crazy is I don't even think OP's sisters are the ones he should be mad at here. His parents are the ones that chose to spoil him and play favorites, causing obvious tension between their children. His sisters had a normal reaction to being mistreated, and sure, maybe that sucks for him, but rather than holding his parents accountable at all or trying to show his sisters that he at all understands their frustration, he expected, and still expects, his sisters to just get over it. Definitely sounds like a spoiled brat to me. YTA, OP. YTA. Younger children are almost always given those extra luxuries. I say this as a mom who sees it in my own family. It's not done on purpose, it's just because parents have learned from their mistakes. Also, parents tend to be further along in their careers and have more money. You need to own it. You were lucky because you were the youngest. It's just the way life is. You should be laughing about it with your sisters, but you insist on acting like it never happened. They will ease up when you ease up. You were the favorite no matter how hard you fought it, and that wasn't your fault. You acting like a child at the age of 26, that's your fault. Okay, so I, 36 female, WFH. My husband, 38 male, works in construction. We both do 8-hour days, but he is off work about 2.5 hours before me because he starts earlier. He picks up the kids from school and then goes to the gym and or the bar down the street. Think like a Cheers situation where all guys get off work, sit around, nursing beers and watching sports, everybody knows your name situation. This is a more recent routine for him. He asks that I text him when dinner is done. This annoys me right off the bat because it is a lot every day to get off work, open the door to your office, and immediately be thrown into watching kids and figuring out dinner. So to think about him casually sipping a beer and then just popping up to enjoy a hot meal doesn't sit right with me. He asked again today and got annoyed when I said no. He thinks I'm being an AH because it takes no energy for me to just text him and doesn't see the issue. Plus, when he is here, he doesn't really help me cook, so what's the difference? I feel like you already avoided all the work associated with the meal. Asking for a special alert for dinner on top of that is outrageous, especially when you already know I'm cooking and you live here. Plus, when he is here, while he might not help, he sits at the kitchen island and we chat. So maybe I am the AH because I would rather he be here and am being bitter about the text thing. I don't know. Is this a normal request? I know this is pretty petty, but we just can't seem to see eye to eye, so I thought I'd open it up to the Reddit community. NTA, this would bother me too. Maybe tell him you would be happy to take turns. You might enjoy hanging out at the bar every other day, sipping beer while his lordship whips up a meatloaf. See what he thinks about that. NTA, but the issue is that he isn't spending time with his kids or you and is instead sitting around drinking. So you need to talk to him about that and make it clear it isn't acceptable. If he wants a couple of nights a week where he goes to the bar after the kids are in bed, that's one thing. But every day between work and dinner? Nope. NTA, that's just plain rude on his part. Tell him you will have dinner ready sometime after X o'clock so he can go to pub, and when he chooses to come back is up to him, and maybe his dinner will be ready. Maybe it won't. Maybe it will have been ready for hours and he will need to reheat it. But if he wants his dinner cooked for him, that's just how it has to be.